Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sources, articles, and real world insights and distill them into the most important nuggets of knowledge you need to be truly well informed. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a destination that's captured the imagination of so many Portugal. It's easy to envision the sun drenched coasts, the vibrant culture, the relaxed pace of life. But beneath that alluring surface lies a practical reality. How do you actually make Portugal your home? How do you successfully navigate Portuguese residency? That's our mission today. We've pulled together an extensive collection of resources from the detailed Access Portugal Guide, which itself cites official government sources like AIMA and municipal portals, to invaluable insider tips gleaned from expat forums and local experts. Our goal is to extract the absolute most critical insights and strategic advice, giving you, well, a shortcut to understanding exactly what it takes to move to Portugal.
And to really frame this discussion from the start, you need to understand one foundational distinction in Portugal's immigration system. It operates on two completely different tracks. On one side, you have citizens from the EU, EEA, or Switzerland. Their journey is significantly more streamlined due to, long-standing free movement rights. On the other, if you're a non-EU national, say, from the US, Canada, or Brazil, your pathway is entirely separate. It involves a multi-step process that begins, crucially, with obtaining a visa.
So, two distinct paths. Definitely something to keep clear. But even before we dive into those specifics, almost everyone, regardless of their origin, will encounter a few foundational administrative steps once they start thinking about living in Portugal. The absolute first, and arguably most important, is securing your NIF. That's your Número de Identificação Fiscal.
Your tax ID, basically.
Exactly, your Portuguese tax ID. From opening a bank account, signing a lease, or setting up utilities, the NIF is your essential gateway to formal life in Portugal. It pops up everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think of the NIF as the bedrock. You really can't do much without it. And building on that, if you plan to work or maybe claim benefits, you'll also need a NISS, your Social Security number.
Right, the NISSO.
Then there's enrolling with the SNS, the National Health Service. You do that at your local health center, the Centro de Saúde, which provides access to Portugal's public health care system. So these three NIF, NISS, SNS, really are the core administrative building blocks for anyone establishing roots in Portugal.
Okay, let's unpack these dual tracks then. We'll start with the path for our EU, EEA, and Swiss citizens. For you, the journey begins with, well, a pretty significant advantage. Visa-free entry.
That's right.
You can enter Portugal and live or work freely for up to 90 days without any formal registration needed.
It's a great starting point, definitely. But here's where the key nuance comes in, the catch, if you like. To stay beyond that 90-day period, formal residency registration becomes a requirement. Yeah. It's not optional. After you've been in Portugal for 3 months, you have a strict, non-negotiable 30-day window to apply for your Certificado de Registro de Cidadão da UE.
That's the EU registration certificate.
Exactly. And this is done locally at your Câmara Municipal, which is like your city or municipal council office.
Okay, so once you're past that 90-day kind of tourist window, the clock starts ticking, you've got 30 days for that application. What does that process actually look like? Is it complicated?
It's surprisingly straightforward, at least on paper. There's a very modest fee, typically around 15 euros. Once issued, the certificate itself is usually valid for up to 5 years. After that, you can apply for a permanent resident certificate. The trick, as we often see, isn't the process itself, but ensuring you don't miss that crucial 30-day window. That's where people get caught out.
Right, timing is key. And what documents should our EU listeners gather for this? What do they need to bring?
Well, you'll need your valid passport, or a national ID, of course, that's standard. Beyond that, the primary document is something called a Declaração sob compromisso de honra.
A declaration on your honor?
Pretty much. It's a self-certification. You're essentially declaring under oath that you either plan to work or you have sufficient personal financial means and health insurance, if that's normally required of Portuguese nationals, or that you're a student. So one of those categories. Oh, and if you're joining an EU family member who's already registered, you'll also need their registration certificate or some proof of your family link.
Okay, that sounds manageable. But here's where it often gets tricky for people, and it's a critical insight for anyone moving. Proving your address. What exactly constitutes acceptable proof of address in Portugal for this registration?
Ah, yes, the proof of address. This is a practical pain point for many. It really can be. Acceptable forms typically include a formal rental contract, properly registered. Recent utility bills in your name are good too. Or a mortgage statement if you've actually got property. A less obvious, but often very useful document is a Declaración de Residencia
Mm-hmm.
from your local Junta de Freguesia.
The parish office.
Exactly, the parish office. They can sometimes issue that based on simpler proofs.
So let's say I've just moved to Portugal. Maybe I'm staying somewhere short-term, don't have a long-term lease yet, or utility bills in my name. How might I approach that proof of address challenge?
Yeah, that's a common scenario. If you're renting informally, maybe without a registered contract, a landlord's signed declaration of accommodation can sometimes work. It depends on the camera. Or, if you're living with someone who is on the lease, you might use their lease combined with a recent utility bill addressed to that location, maybe with a letter from them. However, and this is a key insight we keep hearing, some municipalities can be much stricter than others. It really varies.
So not entirely uniform then.
Not at all. Always aim to bring originals, not copies. And remember that your NIF, which we mentioned earlier, is often listed on things like official rental receipts, making them even more credible proof. So getting that NEC early helps here too.
That's a vital point about municipal variations. What about the timeline for this EU registration, and are there any significant pitfalls to be aware of? Things to definitely avoid?
The golden rule is that 30-day application window after your initial 3 months. Don't miss it. Missing it can lead to significant fines, potentially hundreds or even thousands of euros. They can be quite steep. While the official guidelines suggest about a month for issuance, many offices, especially in smaller towns, can actually issue the certificate right there on the spot if you have all your documents perfectly in order.
Oh, really? That's good to know.
Yeah, it can happen. The biggest pitfalls we see are simply forgetting that 3-month rule, or maybe a misunderstanding that visa-free entry somehow means no further steps are needed. That's a common mistake.
Right, assuming you're all set just because you could enter easily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for our British listeners, a crucial note. Generally, you are no longer EU nationals post-Brexit, so you typically follow the non-EU procedures unless you're covered by very specific withdrawal agreements. That's important to check. Also, if you move house within Portugal, remember to update your address with the camera. You need to keep that registration current.
Any last practical tips for our EU listeners navigating this? Maybe some insider tricks?
Absolutely. If you're heading to larger cities like Lisbon or Porto, securing an appointment at the camera far in advance, usually via their website, is highly recommended. Those slots fill up fast. Smaller towns, interestingly, often have quicker service, sometimes even allowing walk-ins, especially if you go early.
Good tip.
And a key hack from expats. If you find yourself struggling, maybe with the language or the bureaucracy, enlisting the help of a Portuguese friend or even a jester, that's a paid administrative agent, can make a surprising difference in speeding things up. Always bring your appointment confirmation if you have one, and once your certificate is ready, pick up the physical document promptly. Don't let it sit there.
So that covers the EU path pretty well. Now, let's pivot entirely to non-EU nationals. This is where the visa-first rule becomes absolutely paramount, right?
Absolutely critical.
If you're from a country like the US, Canada, or Brazil, the overarching principle is this. You must obtain a visa or some form of authorization before you even set foot in Portugal, especially if your plan is to stay longer than a typical 90-day tourist visit. You can't just show up and sort it out.
That's the critical distinction. It's really a two-step dance for most non-EU nationals. First, you secure the appropriate D-type visa, whether it's for work, study, retirement, or maybe a digital nomad visa from a Portuguese consulate in your home country. That visa gets you into Portugal with the right intention, the right to pursue residency. Then, once you're on Portuguese soil, you convert that D-type visa into a Portuguese Autorização de Residência, or AR, that's your actual residence permit.
And that second step, getting the AR, that's handled by AIMA now.
That's right, AIMA, the new immigration agency that recently took over from the former CEF, they handle the in-country permits.
AIMA being the new key player then. Good to know. And speaking of D-type visas, there's quite a spectrum, isn't there? Each tailored for a specific purpose. Could you quickly list some of the more common ones our listeners might encounter?
Certainly. We see the D1 quite often. That's for employees with a job offer from a Portuguese company. The D2 is for self-employed individuals or entrepreneurs starting a business. Then there's the D3 for highly skilled professionals, the D4 for students coming to study. The D7 is very popular. That's for those with passive income or retirees.
We hear a lot about the D7.
We do. And the relatively new D8 for digital nomads. And of course, the golden visa for investors, which we'll definitely need to delve into, especially with the recent changes.
So a lot of specific visas, but are there any universal requirements that tend to apply across most of these D-type visas? Things everyone will likely need?
Yes. Generally, there are core requirements that apply broadly. You'll always need a valid passport, usually with plenty of validity left. A clean criminal record certificate from your home country is almost always required, often apostilled and translated. You need clear proof of your purpose. So, a job offer, university acceptance letter, or proof of sufficient income or the investment details. And established proof of accommodation in Portugal is key too. They want to know where you'll be living.
And the fees.
Consular fees for the visas themselves are generally quite reasonable, typically in the range of, say, 75 to 100 euros. The residence permit fees in Portugal are separate.
Okay, so once that D-type visa is in hand and you've actually entered Portugal, what's the next critical step in converting it into that actual residence permit, the AR?
You generally have a limited window after arrival, often between 30 to 120 days, depending on the specific visa type, to apply for your residence permit at an AII office.
So you need to get that appointment booked fairly quickly.
You do. This involves an in-person appointment for submitting all your documents again, plus fingerprinting and photos, biometrics basically. If approved, you receive your AR card. It's typically valid for 1 to 2 years initially, and then it's renewable. And the big picture here, the long game, is that after 5 years of continuous legal residence, you can then apply for permanent residency or even Portuguese citizenship. It's a structured pathway to long-term status.
Okay, that clarifies the overarching non-EU process. Very helpful. Let's really drill down now into some of the most popular D-type visas, starting with the D7 visa, often called the passive income or retiree visa. Who is this specifically designed for, and what's the core requirement?
Right, the D7. It's specifically tailored for individuals who can demonstrate a stable passive income. This usually means things like pensions, rental income from properties, dividends from investments, royalties, income you don't actively work for in Portugal.
So not salary from a job.
Exactly. The core requirement is proving a minimum annual income. The exact figure can fluctuate slightly, but currently it hovers around 8,000 to 10,000 euros per year for a single applicant. That translates to roughly 850 euros per month. And you'll need additional amounts for any dependents, like a spouse or children you bring along.
And what's the key here in demonstrating that income? Is it just showing a big bank balance, or are they looking for something more specific?
This is a critical insight for the D7 and where people sometimes go wrong. It's not just about having the money today, it's about demonstrating stability and consistency. Portugal wants residents who bring predictable economic contributions, who won't suddenly become reliant on the state. So showing a history of recurring passive income through bank statements, often they prefer to see it coming into a Portuguese bank account you've opened, or official annuity statements, pension confirmations. That's much more impactful than just hitting the minimum threshold with a one-time lump sum deposit.
So consistency is king for the D7.
Very much so. They're looking for genuine, ongoing financial independence from passive sources.
Beyond the income proof, what are the standout documents required for the D7, particularly those that often trip people up or cause delays?
Well, besides your valid passport and the usual photos, 2 documents that often cause issues are the police clearance certificate from your home country.
Right, the criminal record check.
Yes, and it must be apostilled, that's an international certification, and then officially translated into Portuguese. People often forget the apostle or the translation. The other tricky one is solid proof of accommodation in Portugal. A formal rental contract registered with finances, or a property deed if you've bought something. Just booking an Airbnb for a few weeks usually isn't enough.
Needs to look more permanent.
Exactly. Also, for the initial visa application stage before you get residency, you'll need private health insurance that covers you in Portugal. A European health insurance card, or EHIC if you happen to have one from previous EU residency, is not sufficient for the D7 visa itself. And a key tip we often hear from advisors and expats: try to get your NIF before you even start the D7 visa application process. It just streamlines so much down the line.
That NIF again. Seems fundamental. So, okay, you've gathered everything, submitted your D7 application abroad at the consulate. What's the typical timeline from that point until you actually get your residence permit in hand in Portugal? What should people expect?
The visa processing itself at your local Portuguese consulate generally takes about 60 to 90 days. Could be faster, could be slower, but that's a rough guide. Once approved, you receive a Schengen visa sticker in your passport. That allows you to enter Portugal legally for the purpose of residency. The next significant hurdle, and this is the big one right now, is scheduling and attending your AIMA appointment in Portugal. You usually do this through their online portal, eServiços.
And this is where the delays are.
This is where the major delays currently lie, yes.
There.
Wait times for AIMA appointments have been notoriously long, sometimes ranging from 6 to 12 months, or unfortunately even longer in some cases due to significant backlogs.
Wow, that's a long time to be waiting after arrival.
It is. The initial residence permit you receive after this appointment is typically valid for 2 years. Then it renews for another 3 years, giving you that crucial 5-year total towards permanent residency or citizenship eligibility.
Those AM wait times sound like a real challenge. Are there any hacks or common strategies people use to navigate those delays, especially with documents or the initial visa potentially expiring while waiting?
Yes, the backlogs are a very real issue. The Portuguese government has periodically extended the validity of expiring visas and permits to alleviate some pressure. I believe the current extension runs until June 2025 for many documents.
That provides some breathing room.
It does, but the best strategy is still proactive preparation and persistence. Try to open that Portuguese bank account early and get your NIF sorted. You might need to appoint a fiscal representative in Portugal to help with this if you're still abroad. Applying for the D7 visa properly from abroad is generally much safer and more reliable than trying to enter as a tourist and convert your status once you're in Portugal. That's usually not advisable.
Good point. Stick to the official process.
Definitely. And a clever hack some expats have used, although it's not guaranteed. Consider trying to book your AIMA appointment through a smaller city's AAB office if Lisbon or Porto are heavily booked for months out. They sometimes have shorter wait times, but you might need to travel.
That's a fantastic insider tip, worth exploring for sure. Let's move to the D8 visa, the digital nomad or remote work visa. This is a newer option, gaining a lot of attention. Who exactly is this visa designed for?
The D8 is tailor-made for non-EU remote workers or freelancers whose employment and income comes from a foreign company or foreign clients. The key here is the remote nature of the work and the fact that the income originates outside Portugal. You're not taking the jobs in the local market.
Makes sense. And what's the income threshold for the D8? Is it similar to the D7's passive income requirement or quite different?
It's significantly higher, actually, reflecting the nature of active remote work rather than passive income. The current threshold is around 4 times the Portuguese minimum wage, which works out to about 3,500 euros per month for a single applicant.
Okay, quite a jump from the D7.
It is. That translates to approximately 42,000 euros annually. And this amount increases proportionally if you're including dependents, like a partner or kids, in your application. Maybe around 4,250 euros a month for a couple. And again, just to reiterate, this income must come from work performed for an entity or clients located outside of Portugal.
How do you best prove that remote work status and income? What kind of documents are they looking for?
You'll need clear documentation. Things like copies of your employment contracts explicitly stating you can work remotely, or recent invoices if you're a freelancer showing payments from foreign clients. Sometimes a formal letter from your employer abroad confirming your remote status and salary is required. Beyond that specific proof, the standard documents apply. A valid passport, passport photos, that clean criminal record check, apostilled, translated, private health insurance for the initial period, and proof of accommodation in Portugal.
How does the D8 process compare in terms of timeline and the in-Portugal steps? Is it similar to the D7?
Broadly similar, yes. You apply for the D8 visa at a Portuguese embassy or consulate in your home country first. Processing can take several months, similar to the D7. Once approved, you get the visa, you enter Portugal. Then, similar to the D7, you'll typically have around 120 days to apply for your residence permit at AIMA. This involves the in-person appointment, document check, biometrics. The initial D8 residence permit is generally valid for 1 year, and it's renewable twice, each time for 2 years, leading up to that 5-year total.
So the initial permit length is different from the D7's 2 years. 1 year for D8 initially?
That's right, often 1 year to start, then renewable for 2-year periods.
Is there anything else particularly notable about the D8 visa? Any special features or requirements?
Yes, a few things. A big plus is that you can include family members in your application, which is great for remote workers with families. Also, unlike some other residency pathways, there are no specific Portuguese language skill requirements for the D8 visa itself.
That's helpful for many digital nomads.
It is. And while Portugal initially experimented with some online filings for this visa during the pandemic, our understanding is that most applications now require an in-person attendance at a low AIMA for the biometrics and final processing in Portugal. Our strong recommendation, echoing the D7 advice, is to secure your D8 visa before entering Portugal. Don't rely on entering as a tourist and hoping to switch. It's risky.
Okay.
And make sure your remote income comfortably exceeds the threshold, maybe have a buffer, just to avoid any potential issues during the assessment.
Solid advice. Okay, moving on to another significant pathway, one that's seen major changes, the Golden Visa, officially the Autorización de Residencia por Investimento, or ARI. This one is for non-EU nationals seeking residency through making qualifying investments in Portugal. What are the key investment routes available now, particularly after those big changes last year?
This is a critical area where the rules have fundamentally shifted, and people need up-to-date information. Historically, the Golden Visa was heavily tied to real estate investment, but that has largely changed. The active routes now primarily focus on other forms of investment. For example, creating at least 10 permanent jobs in a Portuguese business. That's a big one. Or investing 500,000 euros or more into specific research and development funds or institutions in Portugal. Another option is contributing 250,000 euros or more to approved projects supporting arts, cultural heritage, or national patrimony.
So supporting culture.
Yes. Or investing 500,000 euros or more into Portuguese investment funds. Crucially, these must be funds that are not directly investing in real estate. That's a key restriction now. Finally, there's an option involving creating a company in Portugal with a minimum capital investment of 500,000 euros and creating at least 5 permanent jobs within that company.
Right. This raises an important question, especially for those who remember previous iterations of the Golden Visa. What about direct real estate investments? Buying property, are they completely out?
That's the most common misconception and point of confusion right now. Crucially, most direct real estate investment routes for the Golden Visa were revoked in October 2023 by Lee 5/6/2023.
So buying a villa in the Algarve doesn't cut it anymore for the Golden Visa.
Generally, no. There are extremely limited exceptions now, potentially for certain types of rehabilitation projects in specific designated low-density inland areas or the autonomous regions of Azores and Madeira. But the rules are very narrow. Investors absolutely must verify the very latest rules with legal experts, as the landscape for real estate-based Golden Visas has changed dramatically. Relying on old information is dangerous.
Okay, message received. Check the current rules carefully, especially regarding real estate. Once a qualifying investment is made under the current rules, what's the Golden Visa process like, particularly regarding residency requirements, which are famously quite low?
Right, so after making the qualifying investment, you submit your application electronically on the Portuguese investment portal that's still hosted on the ACFOI website, cef.pt, even though AIMA handle things now. You upload all your supporting documents proving the investment. There's an initial processing and issuance fee, which is quite substantial, currently around 5,375 euros per applicant.
Ouch.
Yes, it's significant. Once provisionally approved online, you typically enter Portugal. A visa is usually waived for Golden Visa applicants at this stage, and then you schedule that crucial biometrics appointment at AIMA. The initial temporary residence permit granted through the Golden Visa is valid for 2 years. And here's the key benefit, what makes it attractive for many high net worth individuals.
Yeah.
It's minimal physical presence requirement.
This is the famous part.
Exactly. You only need to spend an average of 7 days per year in Portugal. So just 14 days total over the first 2-year permit period, and then 14 days total for each subsequent 2-year renewal period to maintain the permit.
Just 7 days a year on average, that's incredibly low.
It is. It allows people to gain EU residency rights without having to relocate full-time. Family members can usually be included in the application, and importantly, this pathway still leads to eligibility for permanent residency and citizenship after 5 years, just like other routes, provided the investment is maintained and the minimum stays are met.
Any specific tips for navigating the Golden Visa process, given its complexities and costs?
For the Golden Visa, given the financial stakes and the legal complexities, it's highly recommended to hire a specialized lawyer with specific experience in this program. Don't try to DIY it.
Good advice.
You must also maintain your qualifying investment for the full 5 years to ensure your path to permanent residency or citizenship isn't jeopardized. And as we discussed, because of the major real estate changes, many new investors are now opting for the qualifying investment funds or the business creation, job creation schemes as their preferred routes. The focus has really shifted away from property.
Okay, let's shift gears again. Next, let's discuss family reunification, or reagrupamento familiar. This pathway is for close family members of someone who already holds a valid Portuguese residence permit, that person being the sponsor. Who qualifies as an eligible family member for this?
Right, family reunification. The eligible relatives are quite specific under the law. Generally, it includes your spouse or registered partner, also minor children, including adopted children, and potentially adult dependent children under certain conditions, like if they're studying and financially dependent. Dependent parents, either the sponsors or the spouses, can sometimes qualify if they rely on the sponsor, and minor siblings if they're under the legal guardianship of the sponsor.
So quite a defined list. And is there a difference in the process if the sponsor, the person already living in Portugal, is an EU or Portuguese citizen versus a non-EU resident who holds an AR permit?
Yes, that's a very important distinction, and the process differs significantly. If the sponsor is an EU or Portuguese citizen, the non-EU family member, like a spouse, partner, or child, generally applies for a specific card called a Cartón de Residencia de Familia de Cidadão de UE. This application is usually made directly at AIMA after the family member arrives in Portugal. And here's a fascinating insight, a sort of bureaucratic quirk that often surprises people. A Portuguese citizen's foreign spouse does not typically need proof of a return ticket when entering Portugal for this specific application process, unlike many other visa types where it's often required.
That's a great nuance to flag up, a potential stress saver. And what if the sponsor is a non-EU resident themselves, just holding a standard AR permit, like from a D7 or D8?
In that scenario, the process is usually a bit different. The family member living abroad typically needs to first obtain a specific visa to enter Portugal, often a short-term family reunification type visa, applied for at a Portuguese consulate in their home country.
So visa first for them.
Usually, yes. Once they arrive in Portugal with that visa, the sponsor then needs to schedule a family reunification appointment at AMO. Both the sponsor and the arriving family member attend this appointment, where the formal application for the family member's residence permit is submitted, along with biometrics. The document checklist for this non-EU sponsor pathway is notoriously extensive and requires careful preparation.
I can imagine. What are some of the critical documents needed, and what common issues or pitfalls do you see with these family reunification applications? Where do things often go wrong?
You'll definitely need clear official proof of the family relationship. Think marriage certificates, birth certificates, these are absolutely crucial. And they must be properly authenticated or apostilled in the country they were issued, and then officially translated into Portuguese by a certified translator. This is non-negotiable.
The apostille and translation strike again?
Always. You'll also need the sponsor's valid AR card, the applicant's valid passport with their legal entry stamp into Portugal, a signed Declaración de Morada, which is an address declaration from the sponsor, plus proof of adequate accommodation for the whole family. And critically, proof of sufficient income or savings from the sponsor to financially support the joining family member. They need to show they can afford it. Police clearance certificates from the applicant's home country, and usually any other country they've lived in for over a year, are also vital, along with passport photos and the specific application forms.
Sounds like a lot to gather.
It is. Common pitfalls include frustrating delays or even rejections due to missing documents or improperly authenticated or untranslated certificates. Those apostatives and certified translations really are key. Another frequent trap, remembering that nuance we discussed. If the sponsor is not Portuguese or EU, the foreign spouse usually does need that return ticket evidence when applying for their initial entry visa at the consulate.
Ah, so the exception only applies if the sponsor is Portuguese EU.
Correct. Also, ensure the sponsor can genuinely demonstrate enough housing space and sufficient stable income for the increased family size according to Portuguese standards. AIMA scrutinizes this. Like other permits, those extensions to June 2025 have provided some breathing room for expired documents in the backlog, but it's still always best to get the application processed promptly and correctly.
Okay, that covers the main pathways. So let's say you've successfully navigated the visa and AIMA process, your residency status is finally secured. Phew. But the journey isn't quite over, is it? There's a crucial practical to-do list for truly setting up your life in Portugal. What are the essential administrative steps that follow getting your permit?
You're absolutely right. The paperwork continues. Getting the permit is a huge milestone, but then comes the practical integration. First, and this simply cannot be overstated, ensure your NIF is fully sorted and registered to your Portuguese address. We've mentioned it a lot, but it's that important. EU citizens can often get this done relatively easily themselves at a Serviço de Finanças, tax office, or a Loja do Cidadão, citizen shop. Non-EU applicants, even after getting residency, sometimes still need or find it easier to use a Portuguese fiscal representative, at least initially, to manage their NIF registration and tax affairs.
Okay, NIF is top priority. And after the NIF, a bank account, I presume, is pretty high on the list.
Absolutely. Once you have that NIF and some proof of your Portuguese address, like your rental contract or residence certificate, opening a local bank account is a priority. Many banks, including some modern digital banks like Activo Bank or N26, though check their services for residents, allow new residents to open accounts relatively easily. Some might even let you start the process remotely. This account is essential for receiving income, paying bills, showing financial stability for future renewals, and just managing daily life.
Makes sense. What about Social Security and healthcare? How do you get formally plugged into those systems?
Right. If you plan to work in Portugal as an employee or self-employed, or if you might eventually claim certain benefits, registering with Segurança Social at your local Social Security office to get your NISS number is the next step. Retirees on a D7 visa, if they're genuinely not working in Portugal, might often skip this step as they aren't contributing to or claiming from the system. For healthcare, you need to enroll in the SNS, the National Health System. You do this by going to your local Centro de Saúde health center with your residency documentation, your AR card or EU certificate, and proof of address. They will then issue your Cartão de Utente do SNS, which is your health system user card. This grants you access to Portugal's public health coverage, often at low or no cost.
So registering locally is key for healthcare access. And housing, what are the key administrative pieces there once you found a place?
Landlords almost universally require your NIF to sign a formal rental contract. Make sure you get a proper written contract. It's also crucial to ensure your rental contract is officially registered by the landlord at the Finanças tax authority. They usually have to submit a specific form, like a Modelo 2. This protects you as a tenant. And a practical tip we always give: always keep copies of your signed lease, your monthly rent payment receipts, and your utility bills, water, electricity, gas. They frequently serve as essential official proof of address for various other bureaucratic procedures down the line.
Good point. Hold on to those documents. What if you move residences within Portugal? Say you move from Lisbon to Porto. Is there an administrative step for that?
Yes, definitely. It's important to officially update your address. You typically need to file a change of address at your local parish office, the Junta de Freguesia, or sometimes at the Câmara Municipal, to keep your residency record accurate. EU nationals, in particular, may need to formally update their CRUE certificate with the new address. The good news is that many routine updates and interactions with Portuguese administration can now be handled online through government portals like Portal do Cidadão or eportugal.gov. A really powerful tool that streamlines many online interactions is the Chave Móvel Digital, which is Portugal's secure mobile digital ID system. It's highly advisable to apply for this early on, as it unlocks access to many online government services.
The Chav Móvel Digital. Okay, another key term to remember. You mentioned earlier that Portugal's bureaucracy isn't always uniform across the country and that procedures can vary quite a bit. Can you elaborate on these regional or bureaucratic variations and perhaps share some more hacks or tips to navigate them effectively?
Yes, this is a crucial area where understanding the local nuances and having some insider knowledge really helps. It's not always like the official rulebook says. For instance, there's often a big difference between major cities and smaller towns. In big cities like Lisbon and Porto, the demand for appointments at both municipal offices for EU registration and AIMA for non-EU permits is significantly higher. This inevitably leads to much longer waiting times.
Supply and demand.
Exactly. Smaller towns, interestingly, can often process paperwork much faster simply due to lower volume, though they might have more limited staffing or opening hours. A common hack expats share, particularly for those frustratingly long AIMA waits, is that sometimes avoiding Lisbon's main overwhelmed AIMA office and opting to schedule an appointment at a smaller regional branch, if your visa type allows, can surprisingly speed things up for things like Golden Visa biometrics or D7-D8 permit applications.
So strategic location choice for appointments can potentially play a role. What about documentation standards themselves? Do they differ significantly from place to place or even officer to officer?
They absolutely can. This is where discretion comes in. Officials sometimes exercise their judgment differently. One camera might be very strict about needing a formally registered 12-month lease as proof of address for EU registration, while another, maybe in a smaller town, might accept a wider range of documents, perhaps an Airbnb invoice combined with a utility bill addressed to the owner, or that Declaração de Residencia from the Junta based on simpler proof.
So it pays to be prepared for variability.
It does. The strategic insight here is always aim for multiple robust proofs of address if possible. Don't rely on just one flimsy document. For example, Bring your lease plus a recent utility bill if you have one. And those parish offices, the Juntas de Freguesia, can be quite helpful. Some are known to be quite flexible and will issue that official declaración de residencia if you can show any reasonable local proof you live there, which can be a real lifesaver in the early days.
That's good to know about the juntas. And what about handling foreign documents like birth certificates or marriage certificates that need to be submitted? We touched on apostilles and translations.
Yes, and it bears repeating because it's such a common stumbling block. This is a golden rule that can save you immense headaches and delays. Foreign official documents must be properly authenticated, usually via an apostille, if your country is part of the Hague Convention, or legalized through consular channels if not. And then, critically, they must be accompanied by a certified Portuguese translation done by an officially recognized translator. Do not try to submit originals in English or another language, and don't use unofficial translations.
Get it done right the first time.
Precisely. Check in advance if the specific office, like AIMA or the camera, has a list of approved or recommended translators. Failing to get the authentication and translation right can cause immediate rejections and send you back to square one, costing you months.
Okay, duly noted. Any other general tips or hacks gleaned from expats who've successfully navigated this whole journey? Things that smoothed the path?
Definitely. If you're renting short-term initially and struggling with proof of address for, say, your NIF or bank account, remember that Declaración de Residencia from your local junta is often a prime solution. It's worth asking there first. You might also be able to get a formal rental invoice from an Airbnb host for a longer stay, or potentially use a relative or friend's address temporarily, but you'd need their written permission and likely a copy of their lease or utility bill in their name. Use that last option cautiously.
Right. And for those notoriously long AIMA queues for residence permit appointments, any other angles?
Beyond trying smaller city offices, stay vigilant online. Keep checking the AIMA appointment booking portals, like the SIGA platform. Some expats report success finding cancellations by checking very early in the morning or late at night. It requires persistence.
The refresh game.
Pretty much. Don't hesitate to call the AMA Contact Center helpline, although getting through can be tough. There are also some third-party paid services emerging that claim to monitor for and alert you to freed-up appointment slots, but use those with caution and check their legitimacy. And for the EU certificates at the camera, remember smaller parishes might offer quicker walk-in service or same-day appointments if you arrive early and have all your papers perfectly organized.
What about language barriers, especially with official forms or during interviews or appointments?
That can be a challenge, especially outside the main cities. Many official forms are Portuguese only. While tools like Google Translate can help you get the gist, use it with extreme caution for filling out critical legal documents. Misunderstandings can cause problems.
Probably best not to rely on it solely.
Exactly. It's always safer to get help from a fluent Portuguese-speaking friend, or hire a professional translator or facilitator for really important interactions or complex forms. Even having printed translations of your key foreign documents ready can really help smooth out an interview if the official doesn't speak much English.
Preparation helps. And for banking, any insights there beyond just opening an account?
Yes, as we touched on earlier, exploring some of the digital or online-focused banks like Activo Bank or perhaps N26, again, check their current offerings for Portuguese residents, can be beneficial. Some allow you to start the sign-up process online, possibly even from abroad once you have your NIF. Getting that Portuguese IBAN bank account number faster can be incredibly helpful for things like proving income for visa applications, setting up direct debits for utilities, and generally managing your finances smoothly from day one.
Good practical tip. We briefly mentioned NHR, the non-habitual resident tax status, which has been a big draw for many expats. What's the core takeaway there for new arrivals?
Right, NHR. Well, the rules have changed for new applicants from 2024 onwards, making it much more restricted, mainly available now for specific professions or roles. However, for those who qualified under the old rules or might qualify under new specific incentives, the key administrative point is timing. If you intend to become a tax resident in Portugal, you generally must register as such at your local tax office, finances, fairly soon after arrival, often within about 3 months, and you typically need to spend more than 183 days a year in Portugal to maintain that status. If you were eligible for NHR status, which historically offered benefits like 10 years of reduced or zero tax on most foreign income, you had to apply for it formally by March 31st of the year after you became a tax resident. Missing that deadline meant losing the opportunity. So timely action on tax registration and NHR application, if eligible, is critical.
Okay, so tax residency and any special regimes require prompt attention. And finally, any last piece of collective wisdom from the wider expat community in Portugal?
Engage with them. Seriously, don't underestimate the power of connecting with established expat communities. Online forums like Expats Portugal, various Facebook groups like Americans and Friends PT or specific visa groups, or even Reddit communities like Portugal Expats are incredibly rich resources. These are the places where you'll find real-time user experiences, practical advice, and updates on bureaucratic changes or local office quirks. You'll find those hyper-specific insights, like that nuance we mentioned about a Portuguese citizen's foreign spouse not needing a return ticket for family reunification details that aren't always immediately obvious just from reading official government websites. Learn from those who've gone before you.
Excellent advice. Tap into the hive mind. To bring it all together now, let's quickly recap some of the essential Portuguese terms you'll undoubtedly encounter on this residency journey, just so they sound familiar.
Okay, quick glossary highlights. Certificado de Registro de Cidadão da UE. That's the EU Citizens Registration Certificate from the Câmara Municipal. Autorização de Residência, often just called the AR, is your residence permit card, primarily for non-EU nationals, issued by AIMA. A declaração de honra is that sworn declaration or self-certification you might need to sign. A declaração de residência is an official statement confirming your address, often obtained from your local junta de freguesia.
Got it. And the key numbers and places.
The NIF número de identificação fiscal, your tax ID number. The ARSS número de identificação da segurança social, your social security number. The câmaras municipais are the city or town councils where EU citizens register. The juntas de freguesia are the local parish offices, often helpful for proof of address. And of course, AIMA, Agência para Integração, Migrações e Asilo, the new immigration and asylum agency that handles visas, residence permits, ARs, and related processes, taking over from the old CEF.
And that golden rule for documents.
Always remember that crucial rule. You must use authenticated, usually apostilled, official documents from abroad, and they need to be accompanied by translations done by an official, certified Portuguese translator. Getting this detail right can single-handedly save you a world of time, money, and headaches.
Absolutely. It's clear that navigating these complex, yet absolutely essential steps truly transforms what might seem like a daunting bureaucratic maze into a manageable, clear path towards your new life in Portugal. Understanding these nuances really empowers you to move beyond just, relocating to actually planting roots and hopefully thriving in this beautiful country.
And this really raises an important question for anyone listening or considering this move. What vision do you truly hold for your life in Portugal? Is it just about the sunshine or something deeper? And how might proactively understanding these administrative realities, seeing them not just as hurdles but as part of the process, empower you to not just relocate but to genuinely build a foundation, plant roots, and truly thrive there?
The great thought to ponder. If you're mulling over that question, or perhaps dreaming of another complex topic you'd like us to deep dive into, do let us know. We're here to help you get well-informed, one nugget of knowledge at a time.